Bugünün ve sempozyumun son paneline hoş geldiniz.
Welcome to the fourth day of the symposium and the final day of the symposium. And we will be talking about the processes after COVID-19. And today we have four speakers, valuable speakers. And the first one is from Ege University, the head of department and academic board member, board member of the Turkish Spastic Children's Foundation, and it's Pelin Biştav Akmeti. Thank you.
Herkese merhaba.
Hello to everyone. Within the context of the project, if I am exit, my school is a whole from inclusion to integration school education symposium. Today we will be talking about the education processes of the ones, the individuals with special needs during COVID-19 and after COVID-19. So I would like to make my presentation on this. The pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic is a coronavirus which impacted all the countries of the world starting at the end of 2019. And this process transformed into a kind of ecosystem in our country in many fields, including the health. There is a preventive and improving policy. We see that with the COVID-19, new restructuring has become in the lives of the people. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, we had to stay at home altogether, and there accordingly we had changes in our life. And in the early age, early childhood period, there are nurseries who provide care as well as there are the preschool institutions providing education. And what happened, of course, in all these institutions, there came along this digital transformation. With the pandemic process, the children with special needs, as with the other normal individuals, they were made to they were made to stay within a safe environment. And we started digital education as of 16th of March. And with this transformation to digital education, the application in the institutions for the children with special needs also changed. And what happened is that the priority, it has shown that the institutions, some of the institutions could adapt themselves to online systems. However, some of the institutions had some limitations and because they didn't have the required infrastructure. And we know that there were some institutions who did not carry out any education. And the institutions which provide the individual and group trainings for the children with special needs, actually these became more important and more preferable. And this distinguished audience, as the speaker is reading out this text in his as for her presentation, and this text was given not given in hand in advance to the interpreters. We have the difficulty to follow with this speaker, and we will try to do our best as much as possible. Sorry for the inconvenience. And I hope that in the earliest time we will have accomplished this until spring because it has been really exhausting for all of us. And in the first stage, there has been a great effort for the transition for the normal individuals as well as the uh, children with special needs. The health was the most important, and accordingly, they were kept at home to pay attention, social distancing, and hygiene, and so on and so forth. And so, for that reason, during this process, during this time, there have been changes of the mother's role. And apart from being a mother at home, there are working mothers, and the mothers also have undertaken the role of teachers because that the children were not able to go to school. And this certainly created a distress in mothers as well as anxiety, and the mothers were thinking whether they were enough to do so. And accordingly, the roles of the family members were redefined. And one of the factors is that the compliance and togetherness. COVID-19 in the first stage, in the first phase, the people working in public sector, the ones doing screening in the field, the health providers, the health professionals, the teachers, administrators, and many people were on the field, and the audiovisual stimulants were used on the media, and the media undertook on great media, and especially in media, as regards the education, many programs were prepared with all content, and they were broadcasted through EBA TV. And the children with special needs, for them, the opportunities that were carried out in the institutions, actually for them, preparation of these plans are very important. And actually, we were caught unprepared, of course. However, after 1.5 years, uh, we have covered an important way in the preparation of these plans. During the COVID pandemic, the changes in the routine as well as the change of the roles of the family breeze, there has been a change in the participation into the process, and some of the parents are working. So for that reason, some of the students could not participate at the home trainings, and because of the problems at home in terms of behavior, they cannot attend the programs. So COVID-19 was very tiring and very stressful, and there were approaches for protecting the children. And in meanwhile, there was the training and education at home, which brought some behavioral problems, and especially these brought certain problems, and family participation and instant changes and home environment routines are to be changed, should be appropriate to be changed, and this is very important. And COVID-19 in the COVID-19 process, it's important to have compliance and togetherness, and the family and the supporting groups should make planning together. And previously, the speaker made important explanations, and COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic made us to construct a new life, and the families try to cope with this anxiety, and they made an effort to obey the hygiene rules, and accordingly they made an effort to structure their lives, and also they had the responsibilities to going back to the normal and new normal, and the ones with special needs and without special needs. So it was important to learn in the natural environment. Within the COVID-19 process, from preschool to up to university, so the learning environment has become to be the home environment. Actually, we are working in university, and many of our subjects are still provided distantly. So it's in the form of distance learning. Our students come to school from time to time, but still we carry out our lessons as distant learning. And the families with young children who have to cope with these problems at home, we have to, there was the
arasındaki iletişim zorunlu kılmıştır. Yani
There has been
öğretmenler
an
şey yapmak istiyorlar ama
obligation
önceki
of communication between the school and the parents in order to cope with the problems at home regarding the education. There are many problems to cope with by the parents, but they do not know how to do this. For example, if there is a need for physiotherapists, if there's a need for a special education, this special educator should be with the student, or a language therapist should be with the one who needs a language therapy.
süreçteki iletişimin sıklığı kadar bu iletişimdeki
It is
amaçları
also
ve
important
nedenlerini ne kadar
that
vurguladığı daha çok önem kazandı.
how the communication met the needs.
Covid-19 ilk döneminde ve
COVID, in the first phase of COVID-19,
okullarına göndermeyen aileler açısından
the parents who did not send their children to the school, what happened is that this environment has been the home for learning, and the materials, the physical materials, and staff competencies have become prominent. The programs prepared in order to make it has become important that the programs prepared to be understood by the families and as well as the other parties. And when the training or education was planned, it has become important that the needs of the normal individual as well as the special needs children should be taken into consideration. What we learned about during COVID-19 pandemic, we learned that there's education everywhere for everyone, and also we learned how to carry out education at home. In COVID-19 process in the educational institutions, we have learned that it's important and that the other members of the family should also be, we should know them and we should have the education for them. We should see the COVID-19 process as a self-evaluation, because we have to learn what we did good, what we did bad, and we have to identify our drawbacks, and we should focus on the parts that we lack. And we see that what is the objective of education? We have to enable the individual to survive and continue her own life independently with the skills and competencies, and to integrate into the society. And we have to deal the specifications or the features of the individual altogether with the families as well as with the society. In the education system, we always wanted to do this. However, we have had a system which is dependent on school, but COVID-19 process taught us that within the daily life, in our daily life, it is possible that we can have the develop with the life, with the learning that can be, or education that can be developed. And also after the COVID-19, the special education, we need to, there are the plans made, action plans made for the special education institutions, and for the children with the need of special education in different ages. It's important to digitalize certain applications, and it's important to increase the number of the materials that are appropriate for digital use. And it's also important that the children are taught distantly, and it's also important to increase the number of the websites. So what can we do after the COVID-19 in the special education? Actually, we all can do it everywhere, especially the higher education institutions, medicine, education, communication, engineering, health sciences, architecture, law faculties. The studies related to accessibility should be supported, And also it's important to have the effective uh, of attendance of the civil society organizations and parents, and also for this children with special needs for rehabilitation, for language therapy, for ergotherapy, the ones who would help these youngsters or children, they should be trained in digital formats and they should be trained to have them expert in their fields. And the students who would have the distant learning or distant lessons, these should be regulated. And in order to have this, we can have the family trainings. We already organize these trainings, but these should be regular. And there should be specific digital contents for different age groups. There are many of them in the field, but these are independent of the age and they are prepared by the non-experts in the field. And we have to take the age as fundamental here and we have to pay attention to the content. We can provide the support services as to support the children's home and school lives where they would experience changes. And for 1.5 years, the children are continuing with their education at home, so there would be problems in terms of transition to the physical education at school. And in order to make these or facilitate this, we have to provide these support services. And while we do this, we have to pay attention to the type of the need and the age group and many other details. As a result, in order to have this COVID-19 process to be have more efficient, there should be plans made, effective plans made by the teachers within this ongoing COVID-19 process in order to support the education and development of these children with special needs, the parents and families should be involved in the processes. And in order to do that, the trainings should be given to the families and parents as well, and there should be the convenient and appropriate documents developed for these families. And thank you very much for your listening.
Hocamıza katkılarından dolayı teşekkür
Thank you very
ediyoruz.
much for your
Adil
contribution.
konuşmacısı.
And now the second speaker is Pınar Akarsu Özdemirci. She has a special child. And as mentioned before, COVID-19 process has made the mothers to undertake different roles. So in order to understand the mothers and in order to have a healthy framework shown, I would like to leave the floor to Ms. Pınar Akarsu.
Merhaba.
Hello to everyone.
Ben biraz genel bir paylaşımda bulunacağım galiba.
I will just make a general
Az yerde.
sharing because I have given attention to COVID-19 less. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the say in this valuable platform. It's really good that if I can transfer what I feel to you and share with you.
Teşekkür ederim. Şimdiden affınıza sığınıyorum.
So,
Heyecanıma verin.
if I forget something, please excuse me because of my excitement. Just let me tell myself I am 42 years old and
Ve 14 yaşında özel gereksinimli hayat olmak üzere
there are
çocuğum var.
I have two children, 21 years old and 14 years old. I am a graduate of university. Until the birth of Hayat,
İşim oldu ama
I worked, but for 14 years I have not been working.
kızım hayat doğduğunda 27
When Hayat was born, I was 27 years old and I had career dreams and I had a social, active social life. And İpek was 6 years old and she was in the first
çok destek
class and she needed a support in this 27th week of my pregnancy. I didn't have any problem, but she was born and now she has cerebral palsy, mental retardation, and she had bleeding as well, and while born, she was born, and she's being educated in Sabancı schools. In her
personeller tarafından bütün öz bakımı
her
ihtiyaçları gideriliyor.
self-care is met by the
Geldiğinden
professionals, and you see some babyhood, some photographs from babyhood.
Hayat 4
Hayat
yaşında Metin Sabancı okullarına başladı. O sırada
started
4
going
yaşındaki
that Sabancı
Sabancı
school
kızı
at 4 years old. Until 4 years, she had received active
babası da
physiotherapies.
tabii benim vakit ayırmamla
I spared a lot of time for her as well as her father, and we paid attention to her education. Hayat,
maddi ve manevi olarak
when she was born,
hangi doktorlara gitmeliyiz?
we were just
Hangi
thinking
psikiyatriste
which
gitmeliyiz?
physiotherapist we should
Bunlar
visit, we should physicians we should see. We were concerned about that, and we were very young, and we didn't have any health problems. Hayat now is very Hayat is has grown, and I am now feel old. I have an aches, and I just give care to Hayat myself.
yetersizleşmeye başladığını
I
hissediyorum.
actually feel myself insufficient giving this care. So what I would like to mention that
Büyümesiyle birlikte
with the
ailelerin
growth of the
çocuklar büyüdükçe
children, the attention of the families do not decrease. Actually, the strength of the families are lost.
aynı
And
katılımda devam edebilirler. Mesela hayat
for example, Hayat
okuldan aldığı destekle devam ettiriyor.
continues with all the support given by the school. She continues her life with this. Like, however,
Türkiye'de
in Turkey,
Metin Sabancı okulları gibi devamında bir lise maalesef yok.
unfortunately, there is no high school like this school she goes. And
Yani bu şekilde bir lise olmadığı için
since there is not such a high school that she can go, all the special needs would be met by me. This is what would be expected. Perhaps I would not be able to do so. Indeed, this is the point. What I would like to focus on is the school drop-off. As our children grow, they drop school because there are many reasons for that. Because every year they grow and we age. Actually, the dropout is dependent on only one thing. It is just about that the families grow old and there is more support required by the families. Children with special needs are evaluated all the same. They are accepted to say this, have the same needs. However, there are many children who is like Hayat, who need more than one thing, and families like us in psychologically and physically they are worn out like us, and they are affected negatively. And if there is enough motivation is provided, I believe that there would not be dropout. This is also valid for COVID-19. If there is a satisfactory education given, you indeed feel this, and if you're involved in this, then you would not drop out the school. And as a family, we're ready to be the part of this training or education as a family, and we have the motivation and we have a high motivation, but in the continuation we may lose our motivation because this is just dependent on time, because we age, we are tired, we get tired, and we do not see a satisfactory education. So within the COVID-19 process, let me also share with you the distance learning pictures. The Hayat actually shared, participated at this distance learning with all her will, and she was so willing. it might be the case that we have prejudices because we always believe that our children should get the training or education face to face. And even with our colleagues, when we communicated them, we always said that this is impossible. But I was very astonished because Hayat certainly participate at the distance learning with happiness. And I believe that the content is very important. Maybe even though we started good at the very beginning, but in a very short period of time, good plannings were done, and accordingly, as a distance learning student, she got very good results, and this really made us very happy. And this was a very luck, and I can say that we did not regress; we even progressed, and the trainers certainly agree with us. Thank you very much for listening. Mr. Faik, now the floor is yours.
Pınar Hanım katkılarınız
Thank you, Ms. Pınar,
çok
for your
teşekkür ederim.
contributions.
Hayat benim de bir dönem
Hayat
öğrencimdi.
has been one of my students as well. I hope that
Olumlu bakmak gerekiyor.
she will progress and she will improve more, and we have to have a positive look on this process. And thank you very much. And the last
Ekibinden
speaker is Burcu Meltem Arık and Ekin Gamze Gencer.
olacak. Bir nebze aslında
Actually, what I would like to mention is that
bulmuşken aslında
indeed
çıkış noktası da
the
eğitim girişi reformunun
the
önemine
project
dair bir iki
originated from
dikkatimizi
the
çekti.
report, a report,
Olmuştu. Özellikle de kaynaştırma eğitimi evet
especially the inclusion
ileride eğitim süreci olarak
education is a really
seçildi.
rapid progressing
8.
process,
inanılmaz
but
derecede
after the eighth
kaynaştırma öğrenci
grade,
sayısının
we see that the number of inclusion students decreases a lot. So, so when we look into the Turkish reports in Turkey, we have seen that there is no survey or the evaluation as regards the secondary students, as if that there is no inclusion education is given after the eighth class. So it seems as if the legislation foresees that the children are involved in the inclusion education. So accordingly, we wanted to have a survey and we wanted to contribute to the field. So for that reason, this report certainly contributed to this project emergence. Now I would like to leave the floor to Ms. Burcu Meltem. Thank you very much to the previous speakers. They made a great contributions, and thank you for the invitation. And we are very glad to hear what you have said lastly, because we just denoted the problematic field with our report, and this is very important that we hear this, and because we do the monitoring for this sake. And just first I will talk about this monitoring background, and then I will talk about what are the statistics recently, and Ekim will elaborate on this. As you know, our main objective is there are one of them is to contribute to the decision making as evidence based and database, and the second one is the best practices. But in meanwhile, we have the best practices conference, and I would like to invite you there, and you will see their good practices, best practice in special education field, and the monitoring studies are carried out under certain topics. One of them is prior to the higher education. We look into the governance in education, and also we monitor the finance. So inclusion education data are very few, and I think that these fields also should is good that we follow them, and the plans and policy making and the civil society contributions, how they're evaluated, how they're met, and also these children receiving these trainings, educations, they evaluate this. This is important, and of course, investments made in these fields show a lot. We also try to monitor these as well, and all these investment. I wish that we could have seen all these investments because these are the fields that need to be advocated to strengthen the support mechanisms. And another field is that, as you have benefited from the report, it's about the students and accession. It's really a basic issue. And in this field, there are many projects and studies ongoing, and we have to look into the efficiency of these studies. And also, so far, we have not seen an impact analysis on that, or we have not seen a reflection on the community. As we have noted, the data show that in the past time, in inclusion education, during the early childhood, there has been a weighted effort, but as mentioned by the ministry officials, there is this issue of inaccessibility from both sides. The children cannot access the education, and there are political deficits, drawbacks, not educational policies, but care policies, and they should be deemed and they should be tackled together. And the studies show this. So for that reason, both the monitoring studies as well as the intervention programs in the best examples, they should uh, relate to each other. This would be very valuable. And of course, there are other policies involved in this. The policies of the labor ministry, for example, Ministry of Labor. And the other one is the policies related to the teachers. They are very critical, as you would know. And you know, actually, you know the best actually. So in the field of teachers, we just look at the general uh, situation, but we have to look into these teacher specifically, the what is the situation in appointment and in terms of their rights, fundamental rights, and what are their needs. So when there is such a policy, whether the teachers can participate